Hello and welcome to another Shadowverse video. Today we are checking out, of course, a Shadow deck. If it's Shadowverse, Shadow deck, why not? So Shadow got some interesting new cards with the expansion, and I assume with the last expansion, as again, I haven't played much from the last expansion, I took a couple month break, but there are a lot of interesting cards here and a lot of interesting combinations. Putting Poltergeist is one big one, which really interests me. Taking reduced damage and then putting a Pudding Time into your hand with Union Burst is actually pretty cool. Also comboing that with stuff like Demonic Possession, Procession, we'll go with that, is really good for defense and gaining ShadowCraft followers, so it's really interesting. Of course, including Legendary Skeleton. I would like to include more Legendary Skeleton, same with the actual other Legendary. Unfortunately, I've only got one of each at the moment, so I'm working with what I have, so I've messed with numbers a little to make this what I was using. So we've actually got one Great Fox and one Legendary Skeleton. I would personally run at least 3 Legendary Skeleton and maybe even 2 Great Fox, maybe 3 I would consider, as they are both really nice legendaries. It's just, again, don't have them. So working with everything else though seems to do well. One of the other new nice cards, Shunton, is actually quite cool, recovering a evolution point for just Necromancy 8, which you're not using Necromancy with a lot, so that's quite good. And then we also have Bone Crane. Put a skeleton into your hand if an allied Natura and Great Tree is in play. Summon a skeleton instead. Very easy to pull off, as we do use the Natura engine a little bit in this deck, and that seems to do quite well. So we're going to get right into this and check it out. So kicking us off for our first game here, we're playing against DragooseArmy. DragooseArmy is one of those decks where I never really know what's going to happen each expansion, as it can be pretty intense. But I have a good feeling about it, so we're going to at least pray that we can do quite well. So, the Necromantic Aether, Bone Crane, and the Kasha is actually not a bad opener. Could be better, but this isn't necessarily bad. We also got the Pudding, so why not? Pudding is great, gotta say. So we got the Tree for turn 3 with the Bone Crane if we want to go with it, or we can just play Bone Crane on 2, as it's still a decent play if your opponent has no followers on board. You can take fairly decent advantage of it, especially since they went for the Draconic Core. So now we get a basically free Great Tree, and we get another Bone Crane, which allows us to get those double free summons off when we need them. They went for the Desert Pathfinder and Traveler Respite, looking obviously at a pure Natura engine dragon deck. Very interesting. Flamewing Might, another interesting card, a new one that I haven't seen. I'll definitely have to explore Dragon in the future. So Kasha, not bad. Demonic Possession, or Procession, with Pudding, getting us some more cards. Really good advantage. Our biggest kind of swing cards at the moment in this deck are, of course, Ceres and Lubel. Great Fox is also a really good one, and so is the Legendary, but these are all quite good, especially the Cerberus. I've noticed there aren't a lot of good counters to Cerberus in the current metagame, at least from what I've played in rotation. I don't see a lot of people having lots of removal for things like that, and most things that do remove are usually based on board damage, so Ceres actually is a really good counter to most decks in that regard. So I think if I did have the numbers for this deck, I could really improve it quite a bit. So Traveler's Respite, again, they're just going, flooding their deck, flooding their hand, getting as much as they can out of this. Cursed Shadow, not bad, Voldane. It's going to deal some serious damage. It's enough to take out the Ceres this time, which is good. Although, we can easily kill that with the Manifest Malice if we want to, or we can just play a Ceres, and that'll also counter their damage. But I think the Manifest Malice is good because we could also, of course, play the 6 in combination with it to lower everything in our hand down, which just gives us better future advantage. Supreme Dragonkin is the new one, and summons some pretty cool dragons. So we do need to take these out as best as we can. I do have a rough solution to this. It's not great, but it will do the job. If we go with the Ceres and probably Pudding, it might work. Provided Pudding is a low enough cost here. Yep. Putting Poltergeist, put it in Pudding Time. Pudding Time lowers the attack and defense of a follower to 0-1 and removes its effects, thus making it practically useless. And we can easily get rid of the 4-3 with Ceres now, and protect it at the same time, so we're not actually even worried about losing it right now. Since the next time it takes damage, it'll be lowered to 0. Magna, though, a really good play, and could actually take out Pudding Time and Ceres if played correctly. Fortunately for us, it was played incorrectly. Hence the emote, leaving up our Pudding. But they've done a fairly decent job overall. Because now we do have to take both of these out. Or risk losing the game. The Ceres did buy us some time, though, here, with the extra decrease for cards, so it's always good. And I can go for the Necro family pretty easily to fill our board out, and we get 4 damage in, so why not? And with only 3 cards in hand, I'm not really sure what else they could play that would be super crazy. But it looks like they're doing their best to kind of dig out whatever they can for removal to deal with this, because we have lethal on board right now. But it looks like we got the right end of the stick this time around. With only 3 health remaining after that 7 damage, it was still going to leave us with enough to finish this game. Following on from that game, our next one up here is against Rune. Rune, obviously, extremely popular on the current ladder, and I definitely know why, because it is an impressive deck. Shinigami spell boost is nuts, and I can't deny that by any stretch of the imagination, and I imagine it'll get a nerf coming around with the next nerf, so play it while you can, let's put it that way, because it's a pretty intense deck. So nothing too crazy here early. Necromantic Aether, it's really our only good play. It's actually a really good opener to go with that and the Bone Crane. They work well together, so I don't usually mind too much. Going with Bone Crane here, though, a little awkward, because we do have the 2/2 Golem, but I did feel like it was probably going to go face, as that's usually what they like to do with Golems on the early play, so we actually got to play fairly well here. And it was still going to work out to be a very easy turn for us, so not really any problem to remove this board and keep up a skeleton. Our early game mostly with this deck is just making sure we can get to our turn 4 and 5 plays where we can actually do some damage. Shunted, really good. Its evo effect is actually the more insane one of its effects. Giving everything with 1 attack storm or 1 defense storm, I think. I'm pretty sure that's what it's focused on. And that seems to be what the new ShadowCraft cards were mostly focused on. The new archetype they're focused is mainly boosting up 1 defense and 1 attack followers, so it's very interesting. We basically get a free turn to drop the Ceres, similar to last time, which is great. But this time, Ceres itself can actually be evoed for the extra damage, since it of course got Storm. And this is a pretty good way to shut this down too, as dealing with Ceres as Rune right now was not the easiest thing in the world to do. They did do a nice job of dealing with it, but obviously, you know, again, it's not the easiest thing to deal with. And Ceres with Demonic Possession, just because I need something in my hand here. Although I wish I could have done it the other way around, but I wouldn't have obviously had the potential to do it that way. At least this seemed to have worked pretty well. We've now got a nice shadow backlog for Legendary Skeleton. And now we just need to deal with the Shinigami type cards. So Ceres Eternal Bride, pretty decent. It's actually going to take out the 4/3 no problem. The free evo on the Legendary Skeleton is also going to be quite valuable, since we can take out the board. And then we just kind of go board as much as possible and set up whatever we can here. Founder, probably the worst thing that we could have come up against. Although Ceres does deal with 3 out of the 4 cards pretty well, without taking too much damage, I guess, or 2 out of the 4, I should have said. And now Zealot is not really a threat. So our biggest advantage here is definitely the Necro family. I debated on if I just went straight for the Eternal Val, but I needed to make sure I had enough for the Great Tree plays to actually hopefully get over this. Fortunately, we did get a nice spread. And we did get a good draw with the extra tree, so it's actually going to be more than enough to really do what we need to. Again, I wanted a good spread here. Unfortunately, we didn't quite get it. But with one more chance, we might be able to take out this Zealot. And we missed it. Didn't go perfectly, but it was fairly close. And Ceres as a 2/5 is pretty respectable, especially with the negation effect on top of it already. And another founder to deal with. Again, shouldn't be too hard. It's a little bit of a pain that founder now is actually going to probably try and take out my 4/3. Or, sorry, my Ceres, I guess. Luckily, Ceres will survive at least that first attack, provided nothing else happens. And that was enough to cause them to concede. They really obviously didn't have a way to deal with Ceres again, especially if we went for the decrease, and our next turn would have been pretty intense, so I see why. Overall, this Shadow deck is definitely a lot of fun. I think if I had the right tune amount of numbers, this deck could do really well, nearly as well as Rune at the moment as far as what it has, so I'm really excited to see where Shadow can go. I was never a big Shadow player for quite a long time, but this style of Shadow deck is right up my alley as far as cards go, and the archetype that it's going for is a lot of fun. So hopefully you guys do enjoy this video. If you do, hit the like button, subscribe. You'll find the deck list in the description below. Until next time, guys, see ya.